Good day to everyone. This is a magnificent program. It's one I've been thinking about for a long time to talk about what's going on in Ukraine, not from the political or the diplomatic relationship or issues, but the personal issues of how you operate, how you continue to do business, and how do you take care of your employees. So helping us is going to be two great speakers. I'll introduce them one at a time so I can emphasize their backgrounds. Andy Hunter has been with us on some other programs that I've organized. He is head of the American Chamber of Commerce in Kyiv and has an extensive experience with other chambers of commerce and his dealings. So, Andy, can we jump right in and start with you, please?
Yes, good day, everybody. Thank you, Robert, and thank you to all the team at Law Asia for hosting us today. We woke up on the 24th of February. I woke up in Kyiv 5 o'clock in the morning with the sound of the bombs going off and with the air raid sirens. And that's the day that pretty much changed everything in 21st century Europe. So for the last 104 days, we've been working in a state of war. Just to give some background, I mean, before the 24th of February, we had intelligence. The US government was sharing intelligence. They said this is coming. So they said, you know, be ready. And what we did on the 1st of February, i.e. just 3 weeks before the war kicked off, we paid out salaries to all our staff. We paid additional salaries. We said anybody who wants to leave Ukraine can leave. Out of our team of 45 people, one person left. Everyone stayed, and as I did myself. I think, you know, we knew something was happening, but we didn't really believe that Kyiv would be targeted at the very, very beginning. And so on the 24th, you know, we left. Prior to that, we had prepared, we paid salaries every evening before going to bed. Before the war, I made sure I had a full tank of fuel in the car. I had 2 jerry cans of fuel in the car. We were told to have cash, local currency, hard currency, because the banks wouldn't be working. We were told to have paper maps in the car because we were told that the mobile network, the internet would go down, and to hit the road, we needed maps to go west. We had food, water, and then so on the 24th, we woke up and we hit the road and we went sort of west. Immediate sort of gridlock around Kyiv, but then we managed to go to western cities. The first city we went to was Rivne. We stayed the night there. Again, we woke up in the morning that was being bombed. So we went further to Lviv, where we found a hotel with a very comfortable basement, because every time now in Ukraine, when the air sirens go off, you have to go down into the shelter. And we have apps on our phones now, and even when I'm out of Ukraine, I see a number of times a day the air raid sirens still go off, and people have to go down into the air raid shelters. In Kyiv, many use the metro underground station. Even though the last couple of weeks Kyiv was quiet, but on Sunday we saw that Kyiv was bombed again, and one of my colleagues, he actually shared a video. This was like 300 meters from his home, where the bombs hit the train depot, and the windows in his building were pretty much smashed. So as the American Chamber of Commerce, I mean, we, out of all our colleagues all across Europe, we are the biggest. We have a full-time staff of 45 people. And now we have 15 that are outside Ukraine, 20 are internally displaced, and 9 are in Kyiv. So obviously the men have stayed, because anyone aged between 18 and 60 is not allowed to leave. But we have a predominantly sort of female staff, and we have many, so we have continued working outside of the country. Our members, we have over 600 members, very different sectors. We have a very strong legal committee. The legal committee has a subscription of over 1,000 lawyers that are subscribed to the mailings. So 20% of our members have seen damage to their business. So we have factories like the Mondelez factory, which Ukraine made Oreos for all of Europe, and that's been destroyed. The Unilever factory in Hostomel, the tea factory has been destroyed. McDonald's restaurants across in Bucha, in Kharkiv, in Kherson have all been destroyed. So 20% of the businesses have actually seen physical damage. 14% have had employees, at least one employee that has been injured. And very sadly, 7% of our members have had at least one employee that has been killed during this horrible war over the last 104 days. So it's having a massive impact. 40% of the members are, 41% are still continuing to operate uninterrupted, mainly in Western Ukraine. So these are factories like a big manufacturer like Jabil. What they make is they make Nespresso coffee machines, what George Clooney advertises, and they still continue to operate. They're like literally 2 miles from the border with Hungary. So the export is continuing. Sector by sector, we see that agriculture, Ukraine is a massive agricultural powerhouse, #1 in the world for exports of sunflower oil, sunflower seeds. Obviously, that's been disrupted. I'm in London at the moment, and in the supermarket shelves, there's only 2 bottles of sunflower oil that you can buy per visit. But when I went there, the shelves were empty. So I think it's having a massive disruption on the economy. The forecast, we forecast an economy contraction of around 45. This is together with the World Bank. The EBRD, the World Bank forecast is a contraction of about 45%, and the GDP was just under $200 billion in 2021. So it's a massive hit on the economy. The biggest issue at the moment are the ports. The ports are blocked, so nothing's coming in and nothing's coming out. And for a country that's been focused on exports of commodities, both soft commodities, mainly sunflower, wheat, corn, and soya, this has had a massive impact, not only on Ukraine, but also on global food security. So we are seeing countries across, especially Northern Africa, but also in Southeast Asia, that have been very reliant on Ukrainian wheat, on Ukrainian sunflower, and Ukrainian corn. Some places like Egypt or Lebanon, more than 75% of like Lebanon, all the wheats came from Ukraine. But further down into Indonesia, still very reliant in China. Also, there was a lot of supplies of soft commodities coming from Ukraine. So the #1 issue now is really how to unblock the ports, because the war, Putin's war, is not only killing Ukrainians, but it's also putting at risk global security and 400 million people at risk of hunger. There are talks now in terms of how do you open up the ports. That involves obviously having security issues, because if you open everything up and then Russian vessels come in, military vessels, this could be like a Trojan horse, allowing them to come and take what could be the jewel of the crown, Odessa. So I think the ports are the #1 issue now, and talks are ongoing, especially with Turkey, how to open up the Black Sea, because Ukraine's economy without the Black Sea, it just will not work. There is no alternative using railways, further complicated by the fact that Ukraine has a wide gauge railway, as opposed to anything in the EU now is narrow gauge. So you still have to unload, but it's like using a teaspoon to get the commodities out. I think what we've seen in the business community has been the resilience. I've said on numerous occasions, the internet in wartime Kyiv works better than it does in peaceful London. So the companies have really managed to show the resilience. And, the internet during a war has worked perfectly. The mobile networks, work perfectly nationwide. The banks, the banking sector, we were told, forget it. You will not have any access to, not only the ATMs, the cash point machines, but even like, online banking. everything has worked seamlessly. And, we have a very strong banking committee. And, it has been the leadership, the resilience, and the courage of the business community all coming together and really supporting one another. The National Bank, they loosened regulation, allowing for the data centers to be moved from the territory of Ukraine, either up into the clouds or out into Western Europe, like in Germany. So I think the resilience there has been very, very strong. In terms of the challenges, I think, again, the number one challenge has been for everyone is obviously the security and safety of employees, making sure, we've been, especially the first month, the first thing, we did every morning was to make sure that everyone was alive, everyone was safe, everyone was healthy. The second biggest issue is the logistics and the transport, because if you're trading, it's very difficult to trade when missiles are flying and it's interrupted all kinds of logistic supplies. And thirdly, I think it's really the business has dried up, especially for the service providers. So we've seen sector by sector, like the advertising agencies, the consulting, and especially the law firms. I mean, the law firms have seen business dry up, dramatically. Why? Obviously, because there's not, the clients, there's not much going on. What we've seen still is that 80% of the members are paying full salaries. This is 3 months in. We are doing a new survey and we'll have the latest numbers, because, if you've got zero revenue coming in, how do you still manage to pay your team? And, some of these law firms, 100 or so, lawyers and staff, and that is really now an issue. So I think, one of the calls we have been making, we've been quite public about it, is, do business with Ukrainians. Anything, you can outsource to any of your colleagues in Ukraine, to the service providers, the lawyers, please do that. That would be a massive support. Many law firms have sent people out, many, the female partners and the female senior associates and the associates, to law firms across Europe on secondment, because I think it's important really to keep the team, because once the war is over, we do expect a lot of work in the rebuilding, and the lawyers are going to be very, very busy. So I think, strategically, it's keeping that team together, because, we don't know when that victory day is going to happen. This could be in a month, it could be in 10 months, it could be in a year, it could be more. But I think, what the law firms are looking at is really keeping the team together, because as soon as the war is over, we expect a boom in the legal profession. Why? Because of the rebuilding. There's been a number of, I was at an event, it was a small event at the London School of Economics. It was organized by the International Monetary Fund with the World Bank. And it's already talking about the reconstruction. What will a reconstruction of Ukraine look like? The similarities from post Germany, sort of post-World War II in Germany, either a Marshall Plan. We're looking at 4 major sources of revenues for the reconstruction. Number one, it'll be the grants. That's pretty much coming from the foreign governments, from the US, the EU, the IMF, and the World Bank. So these are grants. Number 2, it will be loans. These are from the reconstruction banks. Number 3, this will be assets, seized assets from Russia or Russian entities or Russian individuals. But again, legally, that's still a process where legislation has to be put in place, and that's going to take longer than we may like. So in terms of the money coming from that, I think yes, it will be there, but it's going to take probably years for actually that money to come into the accounts. And then fourthly, it's really the private sector. The role of the private sector here is going to be massive, because you've seen the devastation that has been caused. You've seen the photos. Cities like Mariupol, like Kharkiv, even satellite towns near Kyiv, like Bucha, like Irpin, the devastation, destruction has been extremely significant. And it needs to be all rebuilt, in with the having the the building materials, having the glass and the refineries. Ukraine does not have a single functioning oil refinery at the moment. Ukraine doesn't have a single functioning industrial glass manufacturing. And I think, imagine after a bombing, a war, how much glass will be needed. So we're saying, instead of shipping this in, with hopefully the ports, demined, and the vessel owners allowing their vessels to come in, with insurance, because again, the risk of sending your vessel into the Black Sea at the moment, which is either still the risk of being shot down by the Russians or hitting a mine, is still high. And then so no insurer is going to take that risk at the moment. So, will this be like either political risk insurance coming from the US government, either from MIGA or something like the DFC, formerly OPIC? But so the opportunities for, the reconstruction, that's what we're looking at already. And that's where, the lawyers will have a lot of work to do. So I think the reconstruction is something, we are already looking at. And the role of the private sector, and taking it from there. We are in touch regularly with companies. They have seen that there is no future for their business in Russia. Not only is it now immoral, but it's also illegal. President Biden signed an executive order on April 6th, prohibiting all new investment of US individuals and entities into Russia. So I think, it's now really the companies that have been operating in Russia, for them to focus more on Ukraine. We are working closely with chambers of commerce across the globe on this. And it is really, getting ready for this massive rebuilding of a new nation in 21st century Europe, and everyone really coming together on this. In terms of coming back to Kyiv, at the moment, I'm in London. I am planning to go back in June. We have the last couple of weeks, Kyiv was quiet. However, you may have seen that on Sunday, 4 missiles hit Kyiv. One of my colleagues, he actually sent me the video from outside his apartment. It was like 300 meters from where he lived, and the windows in his building were blown out. And these were 4 Russian missiles that hit Kyiv. So the missiles are still hitting Kyiv. Again, the probably the safest way we thought was going into Kyiv was by rail. But I had friends on the train. There was a missile attack on the railway tunnel that actually brings in passengers from Poland and from the eastern border. And again, that was hit. So the risk of missile attacks is still high. The war continues. And, we have, millions of Ukrainians that have either left the country. We see about 5 million refugees, and about 7 million internally displaced people, mainly have moved from Kyiv and the big cities in eastern Ukraine across to western Ukraine. So there's a massive migration shift, and it's now really waiting for the war to end, for the people to start going back to reunite the families, for the schools to start working, and for businesses to really start coming together and rebuilding the nation. So Robert, I'll probably just cut off there, but and I'll be happy to answer any questions that may arise. So thank you.
Andy, just listening to your story, I just started shaking my head. How in the world can people keep going? And before we started, I was sharing with the two of you the story of a tornado that came through my part of the world. It lasted for 2 hours and 54 minutes. It was a EF4. It had 190 miles per hour, and it just had a wide devastation of entire communities. And yet the next morning, people got up and they were trying to rebuild already. And for me, listening to the stories, I think, my gosh, I think I would be hiding in the basement or in the subway and not moving for as long as I could. But that's not what's happening in Ukraine. So tell me a little bit just about the feeling of people having to get up and they know that there could be an attack of missiles, whether on their building or on the trains, etc. What do you think? How do people cope with this?
Well, I think, Ukrainian people have really united and are very grateful to the support from the international community. Many were thought that Kyiv would fall within 3 days, and the Russians would just come in and take it. But I think it's leadership. It's when you have the leadership at the top, and I think President Zelensky has demonstrated real leadership, real courage, real bravery. When the Americans were saying to him, we can evacuate you, and he said, I don't need, give me ammo. I need ammo. I don't need the right. And I think it's when you inspire a nation, and I think the nation has come together, and it is leadership and this resilience, and we see that in business, with the services continue, as I said, the internet, the mobile, the banking sector. And it is something that unites. It's people are, it's standing up in life to do the right thing. What is the right thing to do? And I think the moral, the ethical, defending your own nation, which is being attacked, illegally attacked, brutally attacked. And when you see the atrocities of the Russian army in places like Bucha, the rape of women, children, the murder. And this, Ukrainians have said, we will defend. This is our land, and we will defend. And we've got some very, very personal stories. A friend of mine that just called me yesterday, and his nephew was in Severodonetsk, and his car was blown up, and everything he had was burnt. His all his uniform, and then so says, can you help send us new uniforms? And people are really coming together and supporting this cause, fighting for the truth, fighting for freedom, it is doing the right thing, standing up to evil, standing up to oppression. And I think this is something that we've seen that's quite phenomenal. And it is it is a war. The risk is great. People are the funerals taking place of everyone knows someone who's been killed already during this war, but it still is the belief in the future, standing up to do the right thing. And Ukraine is extremely grateful to the international community for all the support that it has been given, especially countries all across the world. So I think it is, and it's coming together and standing up for the truth.
Thank you. Because if I have this dream that out of this conversation that we're having, we'll bring together some thoughts, because this is an issue that's not just during a war, but it's also, as the example I gave you, natural disasters and beyond war, civil disturbances, etc. There's lots of lessons that we can do. And I think, Andy, the one that you just told us is maybe the number one, leadership. Leadership brings people together and help them. So now I get to introduce Timur. Timur is the managing partner of Arzinger firm in Ukraine. And here's the one, Andy has 600 companies that he has to manage and work with. But Timur, when it comes down to it, it's his law firm, and he's taking care of the people. So Timur, with this awesome issue, how did you do it? How do you manage it on a day-to-day basis? Or what were your early steps to get this organized?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Law Asia, for this great opportunity to present Ukraine, so to say. It's very important for us these days just to sort of to spread the word about what's happening on the ground. And I'm very much appreciated, and it's really very important that all people around the world really know what is cooking on the ground. And thank you, Andy, for you taking time and making it. And by the way, I don't know, for those who don't know, actually, Robert has waken up today, actually 2 o'clock in the morning, just to moderate this session. This is a real friendship. This is what I call a friend in need is a friend indeed. So I will switch to a presentation, because Andy has already mentioned a lot, and I will just demonstrate it in pictures for you to see what's going on. So I understand that you see my PowerPoint. So here we
Yes.
go. So Chronicles of War. Just before we step into the details and the actual name of our webinar, Practicing Law During the War Times, I just want to make a brief introduction of what is Ukraine and how we have entered into the war, just for you to better understand what's is happening in our part of the world. So why Ukraine matters? Ukraine is the geographical center of Europe, and actually Ukraine is the largest territory in Europe, just for you in case, just to better understand why it's really important to remember it. Andy has already mentioned the situation with the food supply, and Ukraine has been for many years the second largest grain export in the world. So hundreds of households across the world could feel the negative effect of Russian invasion, and it's been in media, it's been in the press. Interesting Ukrainian historian fact: Ukrainian Cossack noble Philip Orlik was the author of the first constitution in the world. And another important fact is the largest airplane in the world, Maria, was built by Ukrainian engineers and was built in Ukraine. Unfortunately, the aircraft was destroyed in the first weeks of the war because it was standing just in the hangar in the airfield, just across the. This is a little bit the map where we are for you again to better understand the situation and how we are exposed to our neighbors. So we have common border with Belarus and Russia on land and water. It's like 3,000+ kilometers. So we've been very much exposed. And if you've been following the situation during the war, so we've been literally attacked all across the border, not only from the Russian side but also Belarus. Russia has been using Belarus territory for trade. Kiev in the middle here, you would see the star. On the left side, you would see the western part where Ukraine is bordering to Poland, to Hungary, to Slovakia, to Romania. So Lviv, it mentioned already by Andy, it's been like Lisbon of Second World War, where people from Ukraine, from central Ukraine and eastern Ukraine, were leaving Ukraine, either staying in the western part or leaving Ukraine for other countries. Here you would see Odessa, which has also been in the line, and here in the Black Sea, most based, which are used actually for logistics for taking grain away from Ukraine, and Mariupol on the right side in Azov Sea. It has been in media, everybody has seen the Azovstal. This is exactly where all this has happened. Well, Ukraine has 4 nuclear power plants, 15 power units, so actually we are very much exposed to nuclear energy. As Andy used to say, every second bulb works from the nuclear energy. And so I think that all of you have heard of the story of Chernobyl. And, these days the missiles are flying over the nuclear plants, and the worst can happen any moment. This is another reason to think very carefully, because it wouldn't be not only the problem of Ukraine, but also the problem of the entire world if something like that would happen. Just this Sunday, when the missiles have hit Ukraine, Kiev, one of the missiles was flying just very, very, very low over one of the nuclear plants. IT in Ukraine. Ukraine has been famous for its IT outsourcing base. It's number one in global contribution to science and technology. We have more than 300,000 IT specialists in Ukraine, which have been employed by major software and companies which have been developing and supporting IT software for major companies. So 100+ Fortune 500 list choose Ukrainian IT services. And our service, DIA so-called, it's a e-government. It has been a couple of times recognized as one of the most advanced software IT e-government product. History lessons. Was this war new for us? I think every time when I address this question, a lot of people are amazed, because I've been always saying that, we've been in war with Russia for hundreds of years. And this most recent war they just resumed the war, which has been around for hundreds of years. You would see here some historical facts when our tensions with Russia actually have started. So Russia has always been doing its best to make a lot of pressure on Ukrainians. I have to admit, however, that it has not always been about Ukrainians. I mean, we can also mention the story of Crimean Tatars, which have been deported from their territories. So it's been a sort of the policy of the state to make pressure on neighboring countries. Here are just some historical facts. Here also some other most important milestones from our recent history. Holodomor is also known as the Great Famine, which has taken life of 4.5 million of Ukrainians, which were artificially brought to hunger by Soviets. We've been having some waves of political repressions. It is so-called executed renaissance, when more than 50,000 Ukrainian nobles, authors, artists, writers have been deported to Siberia, and the majority of them have been executed. This is a little bit about background, and now we come into the war. So this is Kiev. This is how it's a very nice city in the eastern part of Ukraine, in the eastern part of Europe. And this is how we woke up in the early morning on the 24th of February. These are the pictures from the city center, where we have seen and have heard explosions all over our country. As you see, civil infrastructure. This is Bucha. The name of Bucha has become known to all the world, and these pictures have been by all people around the world. This is the satellite city of Kiev. Troops were based, so they have invaded Ukraine through Belarus, Russia, and actually they were trying to attack and Bucha and Pain there, which they have been attacking Kiev, trying our
Magda, can you help, because Timur is frozen?
Yes. I don't know if Timur maybe is going to reconnect, and maybe Timur, you can continue maybe without your video. Timur, are you back? Sorry, go for it.
I'm back. I'm sorry. Internet connection. Yes.
But quite honestly,
Okay, do you hear me
Timur,
now?
the pictures are so amazing. Can we try it again with the pictures one more time?
Which pictures have you seen before?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. So this is Kharkiv, as they say, it's the eastern capital of Ukraine. This is how it looks like today. Mariupol, again, Mariupol is a city in the Azov Sea, and the city which is where the Azovstal main steel plant was based. I can say was based, because it was literally flattened down, exactly the same city, because the city now which you see is very much different in comparison to what you would see now. So apparently there are more than 22,000 civilians have been killed, but the real statistics have been obviously much higher. This is the 500,000 people city. A lot of people have escaped, have been fleeing the war, and again, based on various statistics, a lot of didn't survive this war. Shelter life. So as Andy has mentioned already, we've been spending our time in shelters, in basements, in underground, in suburbs. Kids came into this world in shelters. So this is how modern Kiev, modern Ukrainian cities have been living through the last months. Location. millions of people have left Ukraine. And Andy has mentioned some figures already. A lot of people have been internally displaced, moving from Kiev and eastern part of Ukraine to western part of Ukraine. So the figures, the statistics are very different. We hear that about 6 million people left Ukraine, about 7 or 8 have been internally displaced. We hear that the coming back for several reasons, but apparently perhaps it's too early to say it, because again the war is ongoing. Missiles are flying, and the major cities of Ukraine are still under attack, but people keep coming back to Ukraine. These are pictures from the wartime. These are mass graves. Cemeteries do not really work these days because cemeteries are totally filled. I don't know how to use this word. And in Mariupol, for instance, or in Kharkiv, people were buried. There, people just in the yards of their residential properties, just because they couldn't have another opportunity to take their closest ones. This is the devastation which was done by Russian attacks. These are the most recent pictures from Kiev region when I came back to Kiev immediately after the Russian expelled from the Kiev region. You would see Russian tanks just on the street, on the highway, just 10 kilometers from Kiev, and in my neighborhood, just 1 kilometer from the village where I live, Russian tanks and other military equipment just on the street villages. Here a little bit about figures. Andy has mentioned some of them, but these are the regular reports of Kyiv School of Economics and some other things being caused to Ukrainian economy. So the damages are growing every day. So now we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars, and the war is not over yet, obviously. And unfortunately, these figures will be growing. This is that you'll ever see bigger wilderness Russian Orthodox leaders rocking. I mean, the Russian Orthodox Church has been blessing the Russian army for crimes being committed on Ukrainian border.
Timur, you're freezing again. So Andy, can you help as he reconnects and talk a little bit about this slide, what the doing business in wartime, what that's about?
Yeah, I think basically, so the key numbers here are that 47% of the companies are still continuing to work uninterrupted. Yes, it's still without seeing sort of the numbers, but it's the numbers that are still paying salaries. It's the companies that let me see what I've got in terms of like latest numbers. It's really, how do you continue operating a business during war? And it's finding the balance between the risk. Timur, you're back.
And
sorry.
Andy and Timur, the part of that slide that was most fascinating to me was how many individuals and companies have 6 months of reserves. As I heavens forbid, a good percentage of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So the idea that people in Ukraine are 6 months of reserves, that's sort of an amazing one for me.
Yes, I apologize, but internet connection seems to be not so good as Andy has praised it. So let me presentation, and I apologize, but it's in other countries as well. So this is the last picture which I've demonstrated. So this is the empty Artsinger offices. So how have we been working through the war? So as Andy mentioned, we've heard a lot of reports from US and British intelligence about the upcoming war, and obviously we didn't want to believe in that. But as a major law firm, we are one of the largest law firms in Ukraine. We couldn't expose our people, and we thought of the plan B. So we have developed our evacuation plans. We hired some people in the western part of Ukraine, and we have properly communicated all this internally. And when the war started, the plan was put into operation, and we managed to evacuate our people to western part of Ukraine. A lot of people, especially females, who were able to leave and wanted to leave with their kids, with their families, they have left the country. Our people have been scattered around the 20. As for now, the majority of them are in Poland, Germany, Czech Republic, Hungary. So it's closest countries to Ukraine, but some ended up in US and Canada. So it's been huge movement of our colleagues. We have started to think about their employment from the first days of the war, and actually, thanks to our colleagues from major law firms, which we've been working with for many years, and with our clients, we managed to arrange sort of secondments. So people have ended up with major international domestic law firms in various regions. So they knew our people very well, and it was very helpful that they decided to adopt our colleagues, and they have offered temporary secondments to them for some period of time. We have 3 offices all Ukraine: Kyiv, Lviv, Odessa. Odessa has been in the shooting line, so we have closed it, as well as Kyiv is a very nice office building just in the very heart of Kyiv, close to to the government, to Minister of Defense, etc. So it's a very nice target, obviously. So therefore, we just explicitly prohibited our people to visit the offices, so we work remotely. The only office which remains operational is in Lviv, which has been operational all the time. A lot of our people have been based there, and we do work remotely using the IT infrastructure of our Kyiv office. But physically, a lot of people are based in Lviv. Actually, COVID has trained us a lot. We have learned a lot about the remote work, and it was a very good test for us to check how resilient our systems are and whether we can really work remotely. And it is proven to be very good exercise. And these days, we actually work in the COVID style regime. Andy has mentioned already, legal business has dried out. Obviously, nobody would need lawyers these days, so therefore we had to restructure our firm dramatically. So some people keep working from outside, some people keep working based here, but still we are not very realistical. We understood that it was not possible to keep all the people, and we used this time until the 1st of June, which we have set as a target for the new firm, for the restructured firm. We have restructured dramatically. Obviously, we had to downsize. But now we are in a new old shape. All practice areas are there. We just have dramatically reduced the numbers of back office and legal colleagues. What about the current workflow? The majority of work which we've been dealing with has been sanctions and restrictions dealing with Russian and Belarusian counterparties. So actually, Russians have a lot of exposure in Ukraine all across the sectors, and this has been making us busy dramatically. Obviously, for some reasons, we have dropped Russian clients many years ago, and our firm was not so very much exposed to Russian clients. So this is the reason why we feel very comfortable in this regard. The majority of our clients have been international corporations, but our clients have been dealing with Russian or Belarus counterparties, having trade agreements like shareholders, partners, etc. And these days it's been quite huge for lawyers just to deal with that, because respective counterparties have been sanctioned, some assets have been frozen, some assets have been nationalized, and quite a lot of work for lawyers in this regard. Restructuring of business, a lot of people, a lot of clients are downsizing, closing their businesses, and a lot of employment projects related to redundancies and suspensions of business. Establishment and operations of NGO and charities. All possible NGOs and charities have entered Ukraine immediately after the war has started, and we've been extremely busy with respective legal advice related to establishment and operating NGOs and charities in Ukraine. Big area of practice is relating to the damages. At the moment, nobody really knows where to rush to the core to claim the damages. Therefore, the main focus has been to collect and record damages and prepare ourselves for the battles in the future. Again, there are number of potential avenues to take Russia to the court, but the most obvious one being at the moment being court of rights. But we understand that it's not the most efficient and not the most obvious avenue to the damages. We've been very carefully looking at the opportunities being presented and being discussed by the global legal communities. Perhaps you've heard that some countries like US or UK are seriously considering opportunities to allow suing Russia in respective countries where the state-owned assets were attached. Legal community has been very skeptical about this due to the immunity concept, but still discussions are ongoing, and we hope that soon a proper avenue will be developed how Ukraine will be able to claim the damages, and not only Ukraine, but obviously private claimants. First, the last but not least, the main practice area which keeping us very busy has been merger control. So business doesn't stop. Ukraine has been infamous for catching even global deals. Therefore, sometimes even if you make a deal somewhere outside of Ukraine with companies which are not lucky enough to have some sales or assets in Ukraine, you have to notify this in Ukraine. So to this extent, our agency has been busy as well as lawyers. What you can do to Ukraine these days? There are plenty of opportunities. There are some of them where you can donate to support Ukraine. The charities and funds which you can use, which can be really very helpful. Just National Bank of Ukraine has established several bank accounts. Eastern Europe Foundation, School of Economics has arranged proper foundation, which has been raising a lot of money. Sobor in Ukraine, Come Back Alive, one of the largest charities which was established back in 2014 when the most recent war between Russia and Ukraine has started. And Ukrainian Catholic University has been doing huge effort in helping Ukraine and raising funds all across Ukraine, all across the world. Yes, and the final slide, this is the where from the Ukrainian flag comes. You see the deep blue sky and yellow field. This is very typical picture from our fields in this time of the year. Peaceful picture, obviously. Thank you. I hope that was useful for you to better understand what's going on, and I'm happy to address your questions.
Amazing, Timur. It's just magnificent. But
apologize again.
Yeah, thank you. So what I keep coming back to is the individuals and how it's affecting them, and how, for instance, the two of you as leaders of organizations are able to keep help them and keep continuing to do business. So are you doing, either one of you, something to comfort staff and clients during the crisis, or what are you doing to help? Or you provide them with counseling or anything along that line?
Yeah, I think Andy, from the day, okay, thank you. I mean, from day one, it was important to show that they were not alone. So what we did every morning, we had video calls, especially when we were scattered all over Ukraine and then across Europe. I think it was important, to keep the connection, the internal connection, and to show that we cared. I think, financially, it was also important we found funds to keep, because those that we paid, as I said, we paid additional money in February. We said anybody who wants to leave can leave. One person left the country. But I think it was the compassion and really caring. And it was, because we had people in Kiev, we had one person in Bucha when the atrocities were taking place there, sort of keeping it in touch. But I think, communication was key. So the number one, every morning, the three things I woke up worried about was, number one, is my team alive? Is everyone alive and safe? Number two, how are we going to pay salaries? We pay salaries twice a month now. So we pay on the 1st of the month and on the 15th, to making sure that people have sufficient funds to survive no matter where they are, because many of them have left their homes, and many of them left their homes with one bag. I left with, it was February, it was cold, with winter boots, and now it's summer. So again, making sure financially. And number three was the communication. I think, it was making sure that we found ways of communicating if the internet was down. So we started giving, finding old fixed line numbers, making sure that people were in touch. But I mean, Robert, just answering the question, communication, it has been, that's probably the most important thing. How do you communicate with your team during war? You have to lead by example. It's not easy, when you yourself don't know what the future holds, but I think it's keeping the team together and giving them hope, but not knowing what's happening, but also giving them reality. We have told them this is going to be a marathon. We have to be ready for a marathon, not a sprint. Probably we still, the worst is still ahead of us. So it's being honest, it's being sincere, it's being accessible, but it's telling them we don't have all the answers, but providing as much support as we can.
Andy, the beauty of what you were just talking about is you're sending the message, you are not alone, and by having the communication, that sets the stage. So Timur, I always come back to the individuals and what can be done to help the individuals.
Rob, I think that we've been walking in the same shoes with Andy, actually, and it was very important for us to manage expectations of people, because this wishful thinking, nobody wanted to believe that the war will start. Nobody wanted to believe that it will, when the war started, nobody wanted to believe that it will last for months. Everybody was hoping and thinking that, okay, the war will be over in 1 week or 2 weeks, or the war will be, limited in the eastern borders of Ukraine, where Russians have started the war most recently, 2014. But as leaders, we had to manage this, and we had to be very honest with our people, as Andy said. And from the first days of war, I've been always saying, guys, please prepare for the marathon, for ultra marathon, and be very, very realistic. This is the reason, perhaps, why some of our decisions which we made, just to make these secondments, to send our people outside to our friendly law firms, to our friendly corporations, these decisions they are not understood on the market. They said, okay, guys, the people is the main asset of yourself. How comes you've been training them so long? You've been investing in them so long, and you just send them away. We said, yes, but we are realistic. We have to take care of our people. We are not sure if we will have enough funds to pay their salaries. We are not sure if we will be able just to support them for a long-term time. And then by the moment when we will come to this decision in the future, the opportunities will not be there. This is why in the first weeks of the war, we have secured proper pay places, proper jobs for our people who started to work actually already in the 3rd or 4th week following the invasion. And exactly, we did the same steps as Andy said. So we paid advance salaries. We have been communicating to our people, and we've been extremely realistic. This has proven to be very, very important. And honestly, what I have also understood that we have been very much underestimating the issue of mental health. It has been a huge blow to this topic during the COVID times, but now, I could never imagine that the people who I have always been considering as really strong ones, the Stoics, they have been totally demolished by the war, psychologically. not only, I mean, all, I mean, sometimes partners, sometimes senior lawyers. It's unbelievable. And the role of us as partners and founding partners and managing partners was just, just to give this certainty as much as you can, and just perhaps provide some comfort. And, this, you cannot underestimate it. This is very important. Being a leader, to give this hope and just to supporting your people.
What's really fascinating about what you were just saying, Timur, is that question came from one of our viewers in China. So this is an issue that's worldwide, a global issue, how to take care of people during times of crisis. So if I may, let me shift over to a question from one of our viewers in Australia. Let's take it from the law firm or the Chamber of Commerce. Let's take it up to the Bar Association. So what's the role of the Bar Association, or what do you see going on, Andy, from organizations, and Timur from within your realm? What are you seeing that bar associations are during the war? And also by implication, same thing for a political or natural disaster.
Yeah,
Andy?
I think the role of any association, being a bar association, business association, or anything that gathers people together, is really number one, it's information sharing. Because it's really understanding that we're in this boat together, and times are tough. So I think it's understanding really the latest, or having the information, really understanding the realities of working in under martial law, working during a war, and making sure that everyone abides to all the sort of legal regs and regulations, especially operating under martial law. And it is, sharing information and bringing together. I think, we do see increased interest in all sort of online events, because people want to share information, people want to hear, people want to learn. So it is, the time to really, unite. There's a lot of amazing law firms that are doing, as Timur mentioned, pro bono work. They're not making money, but they're still, going out and helping. And it's in, some of the real creative stuff where you've got lawyers and, some of the best lawyers, or the best lawyers in the country. And, how do you get them engaged, and everyone sort of coming together? So it is, coming together, using this platform to unite, and, keeping people, and really planning for the future. Because I think, we are need to start rebuilding this massive effort of the country. And it's, just uniting everyone and getting ready for that.
Timur.
Very similar to the bar associations. So you bars, we have several, have been extremely active in approaching our major colleagues, major bar associations all over the world, just asking them just to condemn the Russian invasion, just to do something to make pressure on Russian lawyers practicing all over the world. And this has been the main job of bar association. Bar association has always been like a gathering the people and uniting people of the legal profession, helping us just to to navigate in this new stormy environment. Not only us, but also our colleagues. It's been quite useful, I would say so. And I have to admit also that international bars, some of them have been extremely helpful. Some of them have been issuing their letters, their statements supporting Ukraine, condemning invasion, for instance. Association. I was very much amazed, very much pleased to hear the Tokyo Bar Association has issued the condemnation letter just in the first week following the invasion. That was for me very unexpected, and I was very pleased to hear that, because some other major bars have taken more time to issue respective statement. American Bar Association has been extremely active, International Bar Association, etc. So we're really helpful to our friends and networks where we are members with, and obviously Ukrainian bars have been playing a huge role in facilitating all this.
By the way, I just saw this wonderful message from David Denniston, and he says, extraordinary strength under suffering. It could be any of us. You are suffering for all of us. And that's a powerful message. So thank you, David, for that part of it. So let me, if I may, a silly question, but coming back to when you got people who are suffering, such as your employees are, is there any labor law that says, no, you cannot impose on them, or is you have to provide counseling or anything else? Is there new legislation or anything being done in this area to protect the employees?
I mean,
Andy,
obviously there is
No.
no special legislation relating to legal business, but they have issued a number of special regulations protecting people during the martial law, but also helping the companies to be more flexible when they restructure their working places. So, for instance, I mean, obviously, if the people are inscribed, are mobilized are taken to the army, you cannot you cannot fire them. So you have to keep them. You have to pay them the salary, etc. But if you want to make a sort of like you want to make a sort of layoff, you have much more opportunities. Layoffs which would be caused by the damages caused by Russian aggression, you would be having much more opportunities than in previous times, because Ukrainian employment law has always been extremely outdated, extremely Soviet style. So you literally cannot fire anybody. And now our state has been very much advanced in this regard, just relaxing the employee relationships, helping businesses to adapt to the new reality.
Thank you. That is very helpful. Interesting question from Fiji. So one of our participants asking, is there any convention or treaty that relates to the practice of law by lawyers and how to operate during a war? I'm not aware of one, but Timur, have you all run into anything that you're relying on? No.
Not that
So
I knew. Not that I knew.
here's a great area for Law Asia, Magda and Shana. Maybe we can be working on some kind of a convention, a draft convention, because this is not going to be the only incident that's going to happen in the world this year. There'll be something next week, next month, that will be a replication or a continuation of it. So did you have any other questions? Because I've still got a whole bunch more questions that I'm fascinated with. I can continue to pose the questions to the two of y'all. So let me carry on. Interesting question from one of our viewers in Malaysia. Is the government responsible to compensate your firm if your building is destroyed? Is there any insurance? Is that or private or public insurance, or just war reparations if there are any?
I mean, war. We've been dealing a lot with insurances from the first days of war, because all our clients who have been suffering losses, and they wanted to finally look at the insurances which they have signed some time ago, and apparently if all the policies, the insurances, they exclude war as a event, as a trigger, as a loss triggering event. So insurances do not work, unfortunately. Apparently our government has committed to take care of all damages which will be suffered, and there are different discussions in this regard. So one of the discussions is that the government wants to act as a flagship claimant in potential legal proceedings to represent not only public sector but all private claimants in Ukraine. We as lawyers have been extremely skeptical about this for some reasons. So therefore, we hope that soon as the war is over and we will have a chance to sue Russia, then opportunities will arise. But there is no, like, something like automatic regime of compensating, etc. So we will have to get to the assets. We will have to get the money of Russia to get compensated. And yeah, this is the future. Obviously, the ideal scenario, the best case scenario would be Russia paying voluntarily reparations, but we understand that it's rather ideal scenario, which most probably will not happen.
So it really goes to the underlying question of the stability, financial condition of the insurance industry in the Ukraine. I can't imagine how any of this can be addressed considering the magnitude of the damages. Is there any protection being adopted for insurers?
Again, insurance, they have just, they do not consider war as a triggering event. So the insurance is based on our information, at least those insurances which I have taken a look at, and I have looked at least 3 dozens of insurance agreements relating to the damages which have taken place. All of them are very clear in this regard. War is not considered as a triggering event. Forget it.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately.
By the way, Andy and Timur, when you were talking about the policy statements from American Bar and other organizations, Law Asia did issue a statement back on 24 March, and Magda is going to post it for everybody to see how Law Asia is being supportive of this. So let me
thank you very much. It's very important.
Yes, absolutely. It's support and letting you know that others are here supporting you. This is not something that's being ignored, that we're supporting, we're praying for you. So Timur, here's a challenging question from Malaysia. What's the future of law firms in Ukraine? What's your perception?
I mean, so obviously it's now time to restructure and now time for pro bono work. But Andy has mentioned it, and you have seen the figures. You know, Ukraine is a huge country. Ukraine has huge potential, and all these damages, they have to be compensated sooner or later. All these atrocities and everything what has happened in Ukraine has to be rebuilt. So lawyers will be required in a huge scale. This is what I am sure about, and there is no doubt that legal services will be required all across the fields: transactions, banking, finance, infrastructure, etc. So it's just a matter of time, and as soon as the war is over, obviously there will be some, you know, when the country will be starting to coming back. But generally, I'm absolutely confident about our future. The question is when the future will come. Again, we've been in a much better shape for some reasons. Again, we are one of the largest firms, and we've been extremely diversified. So obviously, some practice areas have almost disappeared, transactional, for instance, but some other practice areas have been around, and it has helped us even now, if I look at the market, to feel much better than other law firms which have been focused on very, very narrow fields of specialization, which have been having like boutique operations, only transactional, for instance, or only litigation. So due to our high diversity, it has helped us just to, you know, to be better off. And we also hope that it will help us also in the future.
And Timur, one of my favorite books is not what is the next thing, but what's the next thing. So applying that to the Ukraine, sure, it's going to be challenging circumstances, but in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, this is going to be a hiring boom, a bonanza for law firms and lawyers. So all of those of you who are listening in, get your resumes ready to be applying for some significant legal work in the Ukraine coming up. So
that's right. Yeah,
so
that's right.
So the fun part about this is the questions from all over the world. There was one from Ireland on whether or not this was a miscarriage of justice, or a UN convention on. I remember back about 3 months ago, I was listening to the former prosecutor at Nuremberg, and he was saying that all wars are violations of the human rights. So I don't know if that one will be recognized, but certainly some of the circumstances that we're seeing there makes you wonder about it. All right, so Nepal asked, so how can we preserve our fundamental rights during a war? Is Is there anything that the government can do or that organizations can do? Andy, what about from overall view? Are you working with your members to emphasize to them protecting the rights of employees, et cetera, or what are you doing?
Yeah, I think firstly is really it's doing the right thing, and it is understanding what the employees are going through. I think it's finding the balance, especially when you have organizations with zero revenues coming in. It's how do you balance, and what do you promise going forward. I think we as the chamber, we've promised that we will be paying full salaries until December 31st. We are looking now in terms of our business models, how we're going to go into 23 and beyond. We have some creative ideas, and we've lost 4 people in the sense that they found jobs already in the EU. And we see that, some of the best people, we've tended to hire young, very bright, smart people, fluent English speakers, and already so we've lost some of that. I think it's what our members are doing. They're telling their headquarters, there is no future for business in Russia. And, in terms of the morality of working with the pariah regime, and also, a sanctioned regime, so the sanctions against the companies working in Russia. But it's supporting Ukraine, and again, our call, do business with Ukrainians. Any opportunities you have to, especially over the next 6 months during these really challenging times, is anything you can do together with Ukrainian lawyers. Please do that. I think that's real tangible support, what the law firms need now. And I think we are expecting that once the war is over, there will be so much work coming up for the reconstruction, for the rebuilding, for the modernization of the country. So I think it's preparing for that. But the number one message is just tell the truth. Tell the truth of what's going on, the atrocities, the war in 21st century Europe, and it's to be on the right side of history. I think. This war will end. We don't know when, but I think the most important thing is that we can look each other in the eye and then say, we were on the right side of history during, this biggest conflict in 21st century, this biggest war, brutal war, illegal war in 21st century Europe.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah,
and then
Andy has, yes.
No, go ahead, Timur.
No. I mean, we obviously understand that to some extent. My background is international public law, so I spent a lot of hours with the best teachers, I think so, in this particular area. And even when I was at the university, I have always been very skeptical about international public law, because to me it has always been like a nice, very nice fairy tale, which had nothing to do with reality. So obviously international public law has been developing dramatically over the last years. But if you look at each and every major international conflict, you would see at the First World War, the Second World War, every time after each major international conflict, war, the international security system has been dramatically adopting. We remember League of Nations, which was created after the First World War, and the aim was just to protect the war from devastating wars in the future. It didn't help, obviously. We've seen the Second World War. After the Second World War, the United Nations was created. Now, at this moment, we see that United Nations hasn't been really very powerful, very efficient. Obviously, I can tell you that a lot of bad things have been prevented, but the Ukrainian war now shows that the international law tools do not work properly. So I'm confident that we will see now evolvement of new instruments, new institutions, which will help the world to feel more peaceful, which will help the world to make criminals, to make violators liable. I'm confident that Russia will pay. I'm confident that Russia will be made liable. It's just the question of when and to which price will it be. But on the end of the day, I know that now major legal professionals and the global legal community is working on the instruments how to do it, and we hope to see some very interesting developments very soon in this regard. But even now we have seen that Ukrainian Prosecutor General Office has been working very well. We have seen Ukrainian Ombudsman for Human Rights has been taking care of the people. So it's been quite well. Obviously, the country is in war and the efficiency is not so good as it could be, but the state enforcement agencies and respective institutions have been doing very well.
It's interesting. I saw some earlier questions about the failure of UN to intercede and to try to address this situation. Timur, are you suggesting that there's a possibility that we may see a new growth of public international law as a result of the Ukraine crisis? Maybe not as dramatic as post-World War II, but to the extent there is a gap to respond to these types of circumstances. Is this one of the possible benefits?
Yes, absolutely. I'm confident that it will happen, and it's just a question of time when it will evolve. Because again, we have just Ukraine, all Ukrainians, we have seen that we've been helpless. You know, we are the largest country in Europe. We are in the middle of the European map. We are very important to the world. I'm saying it not because I'm Ukrainian, but just because a lot of people in this world are dependent on us. And I would have thought that such sort of contact, such sort of war wouldn't be possible at all. But unfortunately, we were mistaken. And this is an example, and this is the evidence that the world should change dramatically, and the international security system should be changed.
Timur, it's an interesting observation because one of the questions is more like the Monday morning quarterback who recognizes all the plays that you should have done on Sunday afternoon. And so some of the questions were along the lines was, why didn't you prepare more for Russia and to anticipate what was going on? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a very political question. Again, perhaps Andy can correct me, but again, we've been in war with Russia for 100 years. The most recent war was resumed in 2014, and since then we've been much better off than in the years of Ukrainian independence before, because unfortunately we have to say it, Russia didn't want to release Ukraine, even if formally and legally Ukraine has become an independent state back in 1991, but Russia has been having very tight connections to our politics, and Russia has been influencing Ukrainian economy dramatically. So we've seen a major Russian state-owned companies working in Ukraine, penetrating the Ukrainian economy, the banks, and they have been controlling the Ukrainian economy. We've been having a number of pro-Russian politicians which have literally worked in the interest of Russia. So if you look at all major pro-Ukrainian politicians have been assassinated by Russians. This is what the history doesn't really know. But if you look at the major and the most pro-Ukrainian politicians, they have, for some reasons, disappeared from Ukrainian political scene. Heart attacks, car accidents, etc. And if you look deeper into that, you would understand that Russia has been doing its best to make pressure on Ukraine and to keep Ukraine as the pocket country for all possible reasons. We can spend about these hours and ourselves. And this is the reason, by the way, if you look at the history, I mean, when we expelled Yanukovych in 2013, 2014, during our most recent revolution, which has actually given the rise and has triggered this resume of war by Russia, you would see that Yanukovych was working in the interest of Russia. Our Minister of Defense by then had Russian passport, and his main task was just devastating Ukrainian army. He was not building up the army. He was doing his best just to destroy the Ukrainian army so that we wouldn't be a proper state in this regard. And the actual rebuilding and the actual renaissance of the Ukraine has started in 2014 when Yanukovych was expelled and the new government, new president came to the power. And since then, we've seen this increase in preparation in Ukraine for the new potential war with Russia. And Russia has triggered that while annexing Crimea and while invading in the eastern part of Ukraine. And since then, European partners and US have been helping us and preparing us for the war with Russia. There was only one enemy, which was very obvious, and this is why our international partners, US, UK, have been always saying us, guys, the war will happen, it's just a matter of time.
Thank you. And let me bring it back to my emphasis is on the people and themselves. So let me take it back down to those individuals. Crystal asked, what's it like on a day-to-day basis on infrastructure? What about access to water, food, medicine, medical care? How's that going?
I mean, Andy has mentioned already, Ukraine has been doing very well in this regard, and honestly, I was almost also very amazed how good the systems have worked, how good the logistics worked. Obviously, there were some interruptions. Some major supermarket chains, some major logistic companies have suffered. Their facilities have been destroyed, and obviously due to the fact that the seaports are blocked and airline connection doesn't work, so logistics opportunities have been extremely limited. But having said this, being honest with you, the majority of the stuff has been really accessible, and you could always get everything what you needed. Perhaps some very rare medical stuff would be an issue, and but generally it wasn't a problem. Even with the fuel, until very recently, until like 1.5 months ago, even the fuel supplies have been very good. But then the Russians realized they did do something wrong, and they started to target major fuel storage facilities all over Ukraine. They have bombed them, as well as their refineries, as Andy mentioned, and actually the fuel issues have started. It has coincided with the sowing campaign. So Ukraine is agricultural land, as you understand. So the agricultural market has been in need of the huge amount of fuels, and we've seen huge shortages. So sometimes you were not able to tank your car, but later it started to recover. Even now we have shortages. Even now it's a big deal to tank, to have a full tank. It's limited to 15 liters per car, for instance. Sometimes you have to wake up very early, like Andy, Robert, you woke up today at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to get in the queue, in the line, to get tanked. But generally, all most important stuff has been around. And so in this regard, I'm really very much thankful to Ukrainian business and our international partners for making it happen. Andy, you can comment on that.
Yeah, well, probably for our Australian friends, that they may relate this more than anyone else. I think my son is currently in Kyiv. He's a journalist, and we have another friend staying with him there. And the only thing they asked for to pass on was, I don't know if many of you know what Marmite is. Marmite is, in Australia, you have Vegemite, and in the UK, it's a Marmite. It's a very British yeast extract. So, but pretty much everything is available. In the supermarkets. I think, again, the logistics system came up very quickly. In places like Kyiv, even in the small towns, the cash is in the ATMs, the cash point machines, even though the banks had to give up half of all of their armored delivery trucks to the army, but they still managed to deliver cash to the ATMs and in small locations. And the branches of the banks, even right by the front lines, that they are still continuing to operate. So it is, this resilience, and then this fighting on any front you can to support the nation at this most difficult time.
Well, for those of you in the audience, we got 6 minutes. I'm very punctual, so we will finish on time. but I got 3 questions. So stay tuned. Don't leave yet, because these next 3 questions, I think, are sort of set the whole stage. So a quick one, Timur. How are the courts? Are they operating, or are they closed down, or what's happening with the courts in Ukraine?
It was very much different. So the first days and first weeks of war, the courts were closed, were shut down, but then it started to operate, and western part of Ukraine has opened much earlier. And now we have regular court hearings in Kiev, even in Supreme Court of Ukraine. So it's like it's coming back to normal operations.
Wow, that's amazing. With everything going on, that the courts are still in operation. That's certainly a true testament to the resilience. Now, next to last question. Will any of these actions be taken to the international court, do you think, Timur or Andy?
Oh yes. I mean, now the huge groups of experts have been working, international criminal court, I mean, International Court of Justice, European Court of Human Rights. They have been working very actively, and we have seen experts and prosecutors from International Criminal Court visiting Ukraine. So the work is ongoing. Our Prosecutor General Office has been in constant touch with the major international institutions, and they keep collecting evidences, they keep collecting documents, they keep their eyes open, and it's just a matter of time when the justice will come. Another question is, again, if you look at the enforcement history, and the question is the efficiency, but they will be made liable. And even if, for instance, Russia was expelled from the European from Council of Europe, European Court of Human Rights has explicitly said that, no, guys, even if Russia is not member of Council of Europe, you are still entitled to bring the claims against the Russia and against Russia with regard to the events which have taken place before 16th of September. So the justice is on the way.
All right, and then the last question, I saved the easiest question for last. How will you ever settle the dispute between Russia and Ukraine? Yeah.
If you ask me, I don't believe in settlement in the legal meaning of this word, honestly. I don't believe in settlement. You know, unfortunately, the history has shown that, and it's Mr. Bismarck has said it, any agreement which is signed with Russia is not worth the paper which is used for signing this agreement. This is unfortunately the truth. So I don't really believe in settlement with contemporary Russia.
So beyond settlement, how about an end to the war? What will it take to stop
Ukraine
the violence?
will win.
Okay.
It's
Andy,
difficult
is that a good way to finish?
Confident that Ukraine will
Yes,
win.
I think it's simple. I mean, Russia must, leave. Russian troops, Russian tanks, the Russian military must leave Ukraine. Going back to the borders pre-2014. And I think, that's the solution. Russia must understand that, Ukraine is an independent sovereign nation that is aspiring towards freedom, that's aspiring to values of dignity. If there is, Russians must understand that, Ukraine wants to be free, and freedom and dignity and independence is what we're fighting for. And the fact, that Russia doesn't want Ukraine to exist as a nation, I think the genocide it's committing against Ukraine is, in 21st century is truly horrendous. And it's, for the world to see that. What Ukraine wants is to be sovereign, free, independent, and that's what we're fighting for. To be able to for the children to live in a free land, and I think together with the support of the international community, this will be done. Ukrainians are fighting; they're fighting on their land, they're protecting their futures. And the future of the world. I think the global security, the food security issue again. And it is quite shocking that, in 21st century Europe, we are seeing a war of this magnitude, of this scale in the center of Europe.
I think that is a perfect message for us to wrap up with. What is the ultimate ending of this one? And Andy, thank you for your description. Timur, wow, what a wonderful way to start my day. I don't know how in the world I'm supposed to be able to go to sleep now, but I know I'm going to be tossing and turning, thinking about what you all have said. Don't forget, this is being recorded, and you'll be able to share it with your friends and your colleagues and tell them what an awesome program they missed. And don't forget, we're having November 18 to 21 in Sydney. We're having our annual meeting, and Andy and Timur, I think we should do this again at the annual meeting in Sydney and celebrate. So thank everyone for being with us, and thank you, most appreciative.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Laurasia. Thank you, everyone. God bless.
Okay, God bless everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, bye. Have a great one. Thank you very much.